Sam Njoku, host of the Ravens Talk podcast here. First week of free agency is in the books, and I'm thinking the Ravens might have a good shot at being AFC North champions.
I'm Kadri Ismail, Super Bowl champion, and let's pump the brakes. We got a lot of work to do the offseason, just getting started.
And I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. When is David Njoku coming to Baltimore, or will he come to Baltimore at all? We'll dive into that and a lot more coming up on the Locked On Ravens Squad show.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad show starts now.
What is going on, Ravens flock? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. This is Sam Njoku, joined as always with Kevin Oestreicher and Kadri Ismail, talking Ravens football here with you on a Wednesday. Looking really good for the Baltimore Ravens so far in the first week of free agency, drama notwithstanding. We have a lot to get to on this show. We'll talk about if the Ravens have done enough or on the right trajectory to retake the AFC North championship following a week of free agency from all four teams in the AFC North and also throughout the NFL. We'll talk about which AFC North foe is the most dangerous, who's had the best offseason outside the Ravens in the AFC North that can cost the Ravens the most trouble here in the AFC North. We'll also talk about David Njoku, who just went ahead and visited the Baltimore Ravens yesterday on Tuesday. Will he become a Raven? Are we excited about the notion of him being a Raven? We'll certainly get to that and other newsworthy items throughout the show. But first, the Ravens free agency saga has slowed down a little bit. The first week is in the books. Teams that got their big ticket items. The Ravens got Trey Henderson and a lot others. Ravens fell just a game short of the AFC North Championship in their quest for a third straight division title. What do we believe the Ravens have in store for us in 2026, Kevin? After listening and watching, I guess, the other teams go throughout their free agency period as well as the Ravens, do you think the Ravens have a chance to retake the North in 2026?
Yeah, I think they have a really good chance. I mean, if I were to do the division 1 through 4 here today, I would probably pick the Ravens to win the division again. I say that like they won it last year, but just get back on top is what I'm trying to say. And to me, I think a big part of that is because I already think the Ravens have such a high floor roster. The picture is not complete, though, where you still have to add at multiple key positions. I mean, if you went into the season with this roster as it stands today, you'd be in trouble at certain positions. And again, kind of like we talked about last offseason, some positions would be pretty difficult to overcome unless you get really good production from unproven guys. But I just think that I assume Baltimore is going to make those moves. And you look around the rest of the AFC North, I mean, again, with Pittsburgh, they hire Mike McCarthy, which, again, is just kind of like Mike Tomlin light at this point, in my opinion. And who's their quarterback? I thought that they've made pretty solid moves throughout the course of the offseason. I like the Jamel Dean signing. The trade for Michael Pittman finally gives them someone next to DK Metcalf. They've made some other moves here and there that I like. But who's the quarterback? If they're, I thought Kyler Murray would have been perfect for him. And I know that, people have their opinions on Kyler Murray and how good he is at this stage in his career. But I think that he would have been a guy where if I looked at Pittsburgh with the rest of that roster and Kyler, I would have been like, man, okay, Kyler just might be the middling quarterback they need to get to really the next step that they want to go. But if it's Aaron Rodgers again, I mean, I'm not going to be sold on Aaron Rodgers at 40. I don't even know how old he is right now or how old he'll be at the start of the year. Quarterback's the biggest position. So it's when you look at it where I think Pittsburgh's defense carried them for so long with pretty poor quarterback play, but we saw a pretty big step back from Pittsburgh's defense last season in multiple aspects where they weren't that dominant unit that we'd seen over multiple seasons. Maybe a Jamel Dean can come in and fix that. Jaquan Brisker, I thought, was a good signing for that defense. Maybe he can come in and help with that as well. But Pittsburgh, to me, it's Aaron Rodgers. And I don't believe that Aaron Rodgers, another year older after we already have seen some of the decline, will take them where they need to go. Meanwhile, in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow can take Cincy where they need to go. we know that. But with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that offense, we know how explosive and how good that offense is. I'm very glad Isaiah Likely did not sign with the Bengals. I would have been distraught if that were the case. And they did spend on defense. Round of applause for the Bengals. They spent on defense this year. Shout out to them for doing it. but their best defenders in Baltimore now. So, I mean, you look at it, Blake Maffei's a solid guy who you can put up there against the pass. I think Jonathan Allen's not who he once was, and there are some other guys that you kind of, okay, what is Brian Cook going to do for you? Some solid players, but does Cincy have enough on defense still, even with those guys? I think they'll be a better defensive unit, but is it just going to be Joe Burrow, please save us every single week again? And then Cleveland is Cleveland still. I like the Munkin hire better than some people do. I think that their revamp on the offensive line was very strong. But again, who's the quarterback? Who is the quarterback? Is it going to be Deshaun Watson, who has not shown anything since he got traded from Houston to Cleveland? Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? Maybe year 2 Shedeur Sanders does something. I don't know. They still have wide receiver questions there. I think out of all of the teams in the AFC North, Baltimore has the least amount of questions. Does that mean that their questions are not big questions? No, they are still big questions. How is the offensive line going to shape up? Can you get another pass rusher opposite Trey Hendrickson? Is now Madubuike going to come back, et cetera, et cetera? But I think that out of all these AFC North teams, Baltimore to me has the least amount of questions, and that's why I feel confident that they can win the North this year.
Everything that you just said, KO, so spot on. And inside of the nuances of each team's breakdown, the one area of concern that gives Cincinnati the advantage, a small one, is the fact that Zach Taylor and them, like, their continuity is going to be in place. Whereas Cleveland, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, their continuity is brand new. Like, their OTA is going to be the first OTA under this regime. What's Todd Monken going to be like? What's he going to say? What's Jesse Minter going to say? What is who's old boy in Pittsburgh again? I forgot his name already.
Me too. Oh my God.
For who?
The Steelers.
Pittsburgh.
But what?
Who's the head coach?
Head coach.
McCarthy.
There you go.
Oh, him. I mean, sadly, when it comes to Pittsburgh, I am so used to Mike Tomlin. I'm like, Mike is in my brain. I'm like, no, it's not Mike. But who is it? Mike McCarthy. But the point is that, yeah, he's a veteran coach. Sure, he's going to know kind of like what to say. He's been there, done that. Obviously, Todd, this is going to be his first time addressing the entire team on a consistent basis. Jesse Minter, first time on a consistent basis, going to be addressing the team. I think from the bigger picture aspect of things, that's where I'm like, okay, you know what? The advantage technically is where Cincinnati. More than anything, the NFL will tell you this, that football players are creatures of habit. And from that creature of habit aspect of thing, the more you can give me an understanding of what to expect and all that, the more comfortable I'm going to be. There's going to be new language. There's going to be new way of doing things. What if there is, the special teams meeting, you're so used to being in a special teams meeting before, you did walkthrough, or your walkthrough was so intense and now your walkthrough isn't as intense, or the way you did your film was one way compared to the other. Todd and them, they're going to be trying to be pressing buttons that they've never pressed before. They're going to be, Mike and them are going to be going to the stadium and thinking that that's where they're at, but technically they have a off-site practice complex that they'll be having to go to. So the AFC North, that off-season of work, the ones who can navigate through it the best, that's where, as we go along, I think we'll get a clearer picture. But from a baby steps aspect, there's so much there that is still, and I don't want to fall into the trap like we did last year, where we did with the Cleveland Browns. So, Sam, what KO and I would do every year, it would seem like, the Cleveland Browns would win the Super Bowl of the offseason. They would get some big splash free agent. They would do something. And here we are, we would get Raven fans getting not salty with us, but salty in a sense of, oh my God, what are the Ravens doing? Then we go on the show and we have to walk everybody off the ledge and we talk about it and blah, blah, blah. Training camp would come and, we're seeing what we're seeing and this is what we see and why. And my goodness, Devonta Freeman now all of a sudden is signed. Like, okay, who cares? But
Yeah.
bigger picture wise, I think when you see the routine of what last year was, everybody was saying the Ravens were it. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of saying the Ravens are it. I want them to earn it as far as developing, sharpening, getting in that. You know what it is? The not to make a war analogy in a negative way, but an aircraft carrier isn't an aircraft carrier until it's seaworthy. You could have all the bells and whistles you want until it actually gets into the sea, and admirals and or ship captains, they like to have it kind of go through some storms and just to see how it holds up before you can kind of say, all right, bet this is it. You kind of want to see some storms, if you will, just to make sure that the Ravens ship, if you will, is seaworthy. So I think bigger picture wise, I don't even want to say that they're AFC, they're the leaders of the AFC. I want to give that mantle and put the pressure on Cincinnati, saying that they're the ones that everybody's going to be looking out for.
Yeah, I like that. I like that mindset. And I'm with you. I'm very skeptical of putting too much on the Ravens in terms of, hey, these are the guys that are the team that beat in the AFC North, because they burned me last year. They burned me terribly last year. They didn't even have a winning record last year. And I thought that they were going to be that team in the AFC and the NFL for sure. So I'm with you. They got a lot of things to do. It's not just the players they bring in. You mentioned it, new regime. Jesse mentions here. First OTAs coming up. First training camp coming up. Can he be the leader of men? Something that was talked about. I think he's answered some of those questions, but he'll have a chance to really showcase that ability this first year. And if the troops align right, maybe they're the team, but they certainly do have a long way to go. You guys kind of mentioned it earlier, but let's just get into who you guys think out of everyone in the AFC North outside the Ravens had the best offseason so far. Kevin, I'll start with you.
Oh, but I really like what Pittsburgh did. I mean, again, quarterback not factored into this equation. I thought that Pittsburgh did a lot of good things. You know, I think, like I mentioned earlier, the Michael Pittman move to put somebody next to DK Metcalf, Brisker coming in, Jamel Dean coming in. I think Rico Dowdle was a really sneaky addition for them in their running back room. You know, they've made some decent moves. And also a guy like Sebastian Joseph Day, who I thought the Ravens should have been in on, is a cheaper option as a rotational defensive lineman. That was a good move for Pittsburgh as well. So I've liked what they've done. You know, I think since he would come in second for me and Cleveland third in terms of divisional foes for Baltimore. But I think that, you know, Pittsburgh, it's again, a very uncharacteristic offseason for both these teams, where Pittsburgh usually kind of follows what the Ravens do and, you know, building through the draft, don't necessarily do a ton of stuff in terms of bringing in outside guys or making trades. But for Pittsburgh, it's in the past two offseasons, making that DK trade and doing all that stuff. Past couple of off seasons has been very un-Steelers like for them, just like this offseason in multiple ways has been un-Ravens like. So I like what Pittsburgh's done, but again, it all comes down to who their quarterback is and what they decide to do there, because, you know, you can make all the additions you want to, but like we saw with Pittsburgh for years, you know, if the quarterback play isn't where you need it to be, sure, you can win a Super Bowl without having, you know, this star-studded, like top 3 quarterback in the NFL. We've seen teams do it before. But again, the reason why Pittsburgh was so good, or I say so good, but was able to keep themselves afloat with guys like Duck Hodges and Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, et cetera, was because that defense was, sometimes that defense was scoring all their points and winning them games. Like, that's how good they were. We saw a very bad drop-off from that unit last season, and you have to get it back up to that like dominant level if it's Aaron Rodgers coming in my opinion, who I think is better than the guys I just listed. But again, a year older for Aaron Rodgers. And yeah, so that's my answer.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I can't counter it too much. I will say that I am appreciative that, you know, the edge rusher is in the building and Trey Hendrickson. I'm appreciative that Chidobe Awuzie was able to be re-signed. There are a lot of pieces that went out of the building that were really strong pieces. The number one piece, obviously, Tyler Linderbaum, the center for the Ravens, holding it down since the moment he got drafted and settled in, you know, with the offensive line. For him, obviously, last year was somewhat of a challenge when you have both guards one on one side, one on the other, that really wasn't all that it needed to be. But I think, the Pittsburgh signings, I know even Asante Samuel Jr., he was re-signed with Pittsburgh. I think that's going to really be interesting for them when it comes to, just the back and forth. I think the one departure just recently being Tylan Wallace really showed me that when it comes to the AFC North, who's going to be signed I shouldn't say signed, excuse me, who's going to be drafted and why to fill in these holes that each team is looking at. I was looking at the one report when it came from a Browns aspect of things. We, rarely talk about, the Browns and obviously their quarterback situation. As much as they went through the Shedeur Sanders, kind of circus, if you will, now we're hearing reports that he is penciled in to be the starter, and that just cracks me up because there was so much drama that went into it all last season, all preseason last season, and now here you are like, wait, what? It'll be interesting to see what Deshaun Watson and his mindset is like as far as, one, obviously being healthy, two, okay, he's healthy, but what does it look like under Todd Monken's system? So the question marks are there, but to KO's point and the names listed, you give that edge a little bit over to Pittsburgh because I think offensive line wise, you have some pieces there for the Ravens that are support depth pieces that could potentially be some training camp battles, which is what we need. But I'm looking for what's going on with the draft and who they are going to be looking at as far as some big boys that come on in and kind of bolster up the defensive fronts and offensive fronts.
Very good points, and we're going to pivot to that when we come back to the offensive line when we get back. So stay tuned, folks, for more to come here as we talk about what the Ravens need to do to get back the AFC North Championship. Something today we're failing to get after 2 straight division titles. They fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers and lose that 3rd straight, but they can get it back. We'll talk about how that could happen here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your need. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate of games playing out. Then you can apply that profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Talking Ravens football here with you on Wednesday. Remember, we're here twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. That's twice a day, Monday through Friday, giving you loads and loads of Ravens content, Ravens news as they happen. So make sure you like and subscribe so you can get all of that nice content. I think the Locked On Ravens network is the only podcast that provides that level of content consistently on a daily basis. Now, the Ravens need to push ahead to really fix an issue here. And I want to get your thoughts on this as the Ravens offseason has kind of started trucking along. I think you've gotten the lump of what they're offering for us in free agency. But coming into this offseason, I know Ravens fans wanted them to hit the trenches. Now, they did so with Trey Hendrickson. They've done so a little bit with John Simpson here. But are you a little disappointed with the amount of attention they've put, most notably on the offensive line? I'm seeing comments here, even one very much recently about the Ravens offensive line. I'll just post it on here right now. The Ravens better get this O-line together. God forbid if Lamar goes down due to bad O-line play, some heads should roll. So a lot of people are emphasizing the need for offensive line. I know the Ravens had their O-line coach at Penn State for their pro day as a very big name, potentially could be picked at number 14 for the Ravens. But Kevin, what are your thoughts about this offensive line? I know the Ravens have made a big splash on the defensive end, but a lot of fans are wondering if they're going to find a way to help Lamar Jackson get back to form.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they would/will bring in some more veterans here, at least veterans that I feel like can be starting caliber guys. I know they've brought in a couple already. I think Simpson's going to be your starter on the offensive line, left guard, after the money and the contract that you gave him. But, like a Javon Gwynn and Danny Pinter, like they're solid depth pieces. And I talked about this a little bit on Locked On Ravens PM a bit with my assumption of what Eric DeCosta's plan is, or what I think it is at least, is that I think the Ravens just want to get in as much depth as they can on the O-line because they don't want to have a situation where a guy goes down and then you have no options, or a guy's not playing well and then you have no options, which is kind of what we saw last year where, Falele and Voorhees, while both of them should have been replaced, they didn't have options of these guys that they trusted, but I think they should have given Emory Jones a chance. But again, it is what it is at this point with last year. This year, though, there are guys that I thought would have made a lot of sense for the Ravens. Wyatt Teller signed with the Texans. There are a few other guys as well that you could maybe say you could get. But the problem for me, and it's if it persists, right? We're only a week and a couple days into free agency, is, there was all this money that you didn't spend on Tyler Linderbaum, and that money to me needs to be reinvested back into the offensive line in some way, shape, or form. Now, I guess some of it technically was with John Simpson, if you want to go that way. And again, like the Hendrickson, if I can speak, signing was good for the Ravens. But, at the end of the day, right now, what you have is anything is better than what we saw from the Ravens at guard last year. So you can put anybody there and it'll be better, in my opinion. So Simpson being there, I know there are questions about the penalties and, how's he going to hold up? It's essentially a 2-year contract, not 3 because of the way the contract is structured. But even if you get a little bit elevated guard play, depending on who's there, right now, even if it's Corey Bullock, even if it's Danny Pinter, you've downgraded at center. So you're increasing your guard play level, but you are decreasing your center play level. So really, where are you on your offensive line? It's a push, essentially, maybe even a little worse. I mean, I think it is worse right now than what it was last season. And that's saying something because of what we saw from the guard play. So to me, you need to just reinvest the money. And I think it can be in a trade, right? There are probably potential options that could be on the board. And offensive line is such an interesting position, particularly at tackle, but honestly, all across the board, where, again, like we talked about on this show for weeks leading up to free agency, it is very rare for like star offensive linemen to hit free agency. And so usually avenues to get good offensive linemen on your team is either trading for them or drafting and developing them. Now, there were some center options I thought would have been really good to replace Tyler Linderbaum, and apparently the Ravens were in on a few of those, or at least one of them. Jenkins ended up going to Cleveland, but apparently the Ravens were in on him. So I guess it's not due to a lack of trying, but at the same time, you do have to get some of these deals across the finish line. And I think that as the days go on and more guys sign elsewhere, it's kind of like a slow burn right now where, a couple of guys are signing per day. It's not like the mayhem it was on day one of the legal tampering period on Monday. But to me, again, I'll say it again. My big thing is you have to keep reinvesting this money into that offensive line because I think depth is great, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't have the fortified guys up front to protect your quarterback. So right now, I think you have 3 of 5 positions pretty settled in, but you have downgraded in terms of center in a pretty big way because of Linderbaum right now. And obviously with Falele in that right guard spot, you can put me there and I might do a better job. But at the end of the day, keep putting money back into that line because if Lamar goes down again due to poor offensive line play, that's a really bad look.
Yeah, I think the fact that, Dwayne Ledford is in the building, well-respected position coach in the league. I think the continuity of what you are going to want to run is going to really help bolster this offense/offensive line. I think last year, from what I was hearing, there was a lot of miscommunication and misnomenclature when it came to the offensive line. I think this year, I think it'll be a little bit more like, here's what we're doing, here's our philosophy, here's why we're doing what we're doing, and let it be. And then let's hone in on that. To KO's point, when it comes to that center position, you do want that fast guy that can get out, be athletic, can move, get to the edge, whether it be inside zone, whether it be, that pin and pull action that we are seeing very, very popular with today's offensive line play. That opportunity to draft and or sign a guy because you lost so many guys in free agency and you still have that pool of money available. And obviously you didn't, give it away with Maxx Crosby and him flying back down to DC to go back on over out to Vegas. But maybe he would have gambled it away. Who knows? We don't know. But what we do know is simply put, when it comes to this offensive line, work in progress. Let's not, Eric is still Eric. He ain't EDC. I see some people up here in the comments, y'all tripping, talking about some EDC. Where is Eric still? Okay. All right. When it's time for us to go ahead and give him back the whole full moniker, we're gonna have to wait a while. We're gonna have to wait a while. Brand new coaching staff, brand new Eric. Okay. That's where it's at. So offensive line, we'll see how this next wave of free agency goes. And right now we just have a strong group that can compete / give some depth pieces to where it's at.
So, Key, you don't think that Pinter or Corey Bullock will be the center at the beginning of the season? If you do, are you comfortable with that?
It's not that I'm not comfortable with that. What would make me comfortable with that? Obviously, their play during the entire preseason and what it looks like. But I think that there's going to be continuity with Ledford's way of giving this group understanding. That is my comfort zone if they decide to go with Pinter, if they decide to go with Bullock and not make it outside of them a position battle. We've seen oftentimes where guys will come in and they've lost a big name guy and, fan base team, they get all like, oh my gosh, but you'd be surprised that that guy that was in waiting, he's extra motivated. He knows that, this is an opportunity. And if you got good coaching to support that, and you got a good scheme to support that, then next thing you know, people are looking like geniuses, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we don't need to worry about Bullock or Pinter because Tyler Linderbaum is out in Vegas. We don't need to worry about them. They're going to show up and show out. So, yep, I feel good about the fact that we have a strong position coach and a strong plan moving forward with the way they're going to implement the system. Good implementation of the system is going to mean everything for what is going to be at stake for this Ravens offense.
Yeah, I still think that you do need to bring in at least one more veteran because I think they're going to take an alignment pretty early in this class. Whether that is a guy like Fano who you can move. I've seen a lot about him potentially being a center and you can kind of move him inside and maybe kick him back out once Stanley retires, or maybe you go with a Benga Ioane who just plug and play right at right guard. And then there's your guy there. And then it's Bullock or Pinter, whoever at center. I still would love a trade for a guy like Eric McCoy in New Orleans, who knows if that's even a possibility or not, but I'm just saying, I just want to put that out there. So that's my GM play of the week here on Locked On Ravens. But, I just, there is a lot of risk in terms of trusting either depth or younger pieces as a franchise that's trying to win now. And we saw that this past year. But the difference is that, again, and I will stand on it because I've stood on it for the past year, is if Falele and Voorhees had won those jobs in a competition, then fine. They earned those jobs, but they didn't. They were just handed them at the start of training camp and said, here you go, you're the starters, and there was no competition. So to me, if it's Emory Jones competing, if it's Bullock, if it's Pinter as a veteran, if any of those guys, and they win a job by playing really well, then that's great. But there's also a risk in that by what if they don't play well. That's why I think having as much depth as possible and then figuring it out later, that's the best course of action for the Ravens at a lot of different positions, not just offensive line. So, I mean, if you bring in a veteran and that guy is competing for a starting job, I think that's great. But also having sure options there, even if it's just for a year, I think that also is something they really need to look at, because I would rather have 12 offensive linemen you really like and you have to cut down to 9 or 10 than only having 7 you feel good about and the rest of your roster, like, we don't really like this guy. We got to put him on there because we got to keep depth. Like, I'd rather go above and beyond to get as much depth and as much good depth in the building and good options in the building as you can, and guys that can start for you, as opposed to, I guess, taking a risk right now, because frankly, that year was last year for that risk and it didn't work. So now I want to kind of play it more safe if I'm the Ravens, or safer, especially with kind of, every year that you wasted Lamar Jackson's prime is a year you're not getting back. And it's a weird situation because Jesse Minter's a first-time head coach, or first-year head coach and a first-time head coach. So putting those expectations, like, if they don't win the Super Bowl, Jesse Minter, no, that's not what's going to happen here. But again, we also understand that it is important to win a Super Bowl as soon as possible, because you just never know. Opportunities, they come and go. I mean, I still think about 2014. I still think about 2023, 2006. Like, there are those teams where it's just like, man, what if? And then it takes a while for you to get back sometimes. Sometimes you never get back. So you need to do everything in your power. It's a balance of short-term and long-term, and that's a balance every general manager, every roster builder has to go through. But I think there also has to be an awareness of just like where you are in your timeline. And I think for the Ravens, I have confidence that Jesse Minter can win a Super Bowl very early in his tenure, much like Mike McDonald did in Seattle. But again, you have to have the correct balance of veterans and young guys, of proven talent and unproven talent. But those risks can be very detrimental if you don't get them right, like we saw last season.
Okay, general manager KO just gave me all just motivation. I'm motivated now.
Let's go.
Like, okay.
All right, I'm hired again. After being fired for a month straight, I'm hired.
You have been. You're on probation.
Yeah.
I think we need to go out and get Connor Williams in. Boom, done. Let's we going big. But go big or go home. Like, literally, when it comes to, well, for him, it's about the injury. And if his injury situation is all right, then great, because it is an injury, and we already know what happened with Maxx. But he ain't that upper tier. Go ahead and give 2 first-round picks away. So maybe, KO, if you're willing to be patient, we will allow for him to kind of continue to heal, which lowers his, I hate to say this word, it's the V word, value. Ugh.
Yeah.
That and compensatory picks. Oh my goodness. Okay, I feel better now. Anyway, as I just collect my thoughts, Connor Williams, I think if you can put him in the mix, Pinter and Bullock, have those 3 kind of duke it out, cut one of them or trade one of them when the smoke clears. And to your point, KO, with all the Raven history of almost times of getting a chance to represent the Ravens yet again in the Super Bowl and those failed attempts, you don't want to play around with this portion of Lamar Jackson's career. Go out and get a big boy like a Connor Williams.
I'm hoping. That's a great point. I'm hoping that happens. We'll see. Again, this is just the beginning of free agency. Don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket as far as what we think is going to happen too soon. But, man, those moves would definitely help with an offensive line. I know a lot of fans are saying it in the comment section. Not a lot of money in the payroll tied to these guys, and it's looking like that based on the product that was shown last year. We'll see if the Ravens can do their due diligence and make it a better outcome in 2026. When we come back, we'll talk about some free agency news regarding the Baltimore Ravens. 2 players in particular. One's leaving, one's coming in potentially. We'll talk about it here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat line that says it all. In a minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get the job premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. We are back with the Locked On Ravens Squad show here Wednesday, talking Ravens football, feeling pretty good about it. The Ravens made some moves and have gained some players and lost some players. I saw Kevin's post on social media outlining all the players that have gone and come. And it's extensive. It's a pretty large list. A lot of talent has left the building. One such notable player is a guy by the name of Tylan Wallace, who has had a lot of historical big-time moments during his brief time here at Baltimore. He has agreed to a deal with the Cleveland Browns. A lot of inter-division transfer of powers. Trey Hendrickson comes to Baltimore. The Browns now get Tylan Wallace. He's a guy who didn't really push the envelope as far as superstar power, but he was definitely a talent for this locker room. Kevin, how do you feel with Tylan Wallace heading over to the Dog Pound?
Yeah, we can put Tylan in the what if category of Ravens wide receivers. You got James Prochet in there. Jordan Lasley, Jaleel Scott, those mid-round wide receivers that, thought at the time had so much potential. Miles Boykin, this guy's going to be great. This guy's going to be great. And then, of course, whether due to just lack of playing time or other situations, it just, didn't pan out into a bigger time role. And Tyler, when he was called upon, for the most part, I thought stepped up in a lot of different moments. Obviously, the punt return against the Rams in overtime is what everyone is going to look for in terms of a memory of Tylan Wallace, but he also had a couple of other big moments as someone that refused to go down, super hard worker, special teams guy. He was a Raven. And so him going to Cleveland, he's reunited with Todd Monken over there. Maybe he can actually be a decent part of that offense because, wide receiver wise, they don't really have a ton over there right now. So maybe they view Tylan as a bigger part of their offense than Baltimore did. And I think that's a really good opportunity for him if that is the case. Again, I'm kind of wondering who the quarterback's going to be that's going to be throwing to him. But, it's about opportunity. And I think that Tylan, didn't have as many opportunities over the course of his time in Baltimore at the wide receiver position. He is known for his special teams ability, but I think if in the right opportunity could be a pretty valuable, somewhat decent wide receiver at the NFL level. So I think that, Baltimore, I would have liked them back with the Ravens, but I think when you already have four guys, you're expecting a bigger role from Tez Walker this year. I think you need more of a veteran in one of those spots and then probably a rookie in the other. Felt like there wasn't really room for Tylan anymore, which is disappointing because I would have loved to see him back. But, I wish him the best in Cleveland. I think that he can maybe do something over there.
Of all the names that you mentioned, and it's so funny when I was working with the Ravens broadcast, I would sit back and be like, oh, buddy, this guy's going to be this guy's going to be and Tylan, I think if I had to put him in the category, is he one of those lower tier? Oh man, boy, I wish. Or an upper tier guy. Like one of my favorites that never really materialized was Tandon Doss, for example.
That's Joe Flacco's guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, goodness gracious. But I think Tylan, because every time he was on the field, when I observed from just a pure receiver standpoint, through all the training camps, and then in his opportunities that he was given, sometimes, as a receiver, you're only going to get a limited amount of, snaps, targets. A great opportunity is 8 to 9 times you can affect the portion of a game by catches, or you might only on the average get like 4 to 6 opportunities. But there are times where as a receiver, you'll be blocking and you don't have the ball, but you're affecting a play. Tylan, in my humble opinion, was that upper tier guy that might not statistically be like, oh, wow, but I'm giving him his props in the way he showed up every day in practice, what he did as far as his special teams play. I mean, it's hard when you're not the primary punt returner. And all of a sudden, they're like, oh, yeah, Tyler, go back out there. You're like, oh, wait, what? And the wind or the conditions dictate you gotta be that guy. Not everybody can just be Ed Reed, and it don't matter if you do or don't. You just go back there and make a big old spectacular play, punt return wise, because that's why you the GOAT. But for Thailand, we got to give him his flowers. Greatly going to be missed here. I think he was an awesome locker room guy, amazing, just supportive, role play teammate, and just the big plays. I saw the one that you had posted up as well, KO, like on X, like he just, was clutch. He's clutch with his catches, clutch. You don't win the Rams game if he doesn't take we used to call it Orlando, just to go to show you just how fancy our names were. But Orlando was an out route, out. But Orlando signified every guy, whether it be 3 wides, 2 wides, 1 wide, everybody is doing an out route. And so off of that, you would have, whatever variations. You can go Orlando, Z go. And that just means that it's a fake out and up. You could tag it however you want to. See what I just did there, KO? See, I didn't go the general manager's route like you did. I went the player route, and I'm giving people in the chat information.
Wow.
Quality information. Okay? Orlando. Anyway, he took his Orlando route, took it to the hizzy, and you wind up beating on a primetime stage. Well, was it not the Rams? It was Cincinnati.
Yeah, that was since he was the primetime one, yeah.
Yep.
Rams was a 4-o'clock game.
Yep.
Boom. There it is. So bottom line is, when it comes to just his play, it might not have been volumes, but he was clutch when his name was called upon.
Yeah, he was clutch. I love Tylan Wallace. Every time I saw him on the field, I said, okay, at least we're going to have a guy who knows what he's doing out there and is going to do okay when the number is called. He's not going to make any mistakes. He's going to go out there and do what he has to do to the best of his ability. So that's a trait that I think a lot of coaches maybe miss sometimes. And I'm sure Todd Monken's now one of them, because he heads over to Cleveland, and now he is the 12th Raven to leave the roster via free agency this year, which is huge with the methylene blue out there. Q is. Listen, I'm not one to push the envelope on this. I know a lot of Ravens fans may feel some type of way. I know the national media is looking at this like the Ravens are losing loads and loads of talent. Kevin, how do you feel about this? Another Ravens player fails to re-sign with the Ravens. He goes on somewhere else. Are you nervous about this, or do you think the Ravens can bounce back?
From all the players that they're losing?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely tough. And, as I was writing it out, for that tweet I put up on social media, I mean, it's a lot of guys, and it's a lot of quality guys as well. So you're going to have to find ways that you can replace them and replace them well, to where, again, like a guy like David Njoku, who we're going to get to in a little bit here, if he's replacing Isaiah Likely, then boom, I think you're in a good spot. Like Smythe coming in and replacing Kohler, he gives you some stuff. But it's just going to be about like the bigger guys. Like, we know that for the Ravens, they're not really going to bring in a Ricard replacement. Like Jalen Hawkins, I think, is really intriguing for that like third safety look that can free up Kyle Hamilton. So, I mean, you're bringing in pieces, but it really is just that center situation. So at the end of the day, like, you've lost a ton of talent. Now it's up to you to replace that talent. Right now, you've lost more talent than you've brought in, even with Hendrickson in the building. Because, if you want to do the Hendrickson and Linderbaum, either 1-for-1, and you want to just take both those guys out of the equation, bring in a star, and you lose a star. You also, now you take those guys out, and there's a lot more that you have to do to continue to add to your roster. So, I mean, I think they can bounce back. And again, we're only a week and a couple days into free agency so far. So there is plenty of time for them to add guys to the draft, obviously, when it comes, for them to continue to make more moves. But again, reinvesting that money, using that cap space is going to be really important over these next couple of weeks if they do want to add vets, because with each day you wait, more and more options come off the board.
Yeah, I think one piece to add to that is the continuity of the energy in the locker room. One thing that you just knew, you just had good, strong, competitive energy. Obviously, Faalele, Voorhees messed the whole thing up. But outside of the on the field, yeah, you wish you would have been having a lot better. But I think bigger picture wise, that in locker room vibe is highly critical. And Jordan Stout, for example, you didn't hear guys get on him as far as like, oh man, Jordan, man, golly, man, he keep, you didn't see all that. What you did see were guys supporting, working with, including him in. Therefore, he was able to continue to work on his craft. By working on your craft, you put yourself into position now to be all pro. When you look at the likely Kolar element, yeah, they got paid. Well, they got paid because you had Andrews, likely, Kolar, Ricard, all sitting there gelling together. You didn't have a like, man, I should be getting this, or I should be. There wasn't this back and forth that went on. I promise you. Technically, I've been on one team that was like that, and that can destroy a team. So that's one thing I am curious about. How is it going to be for Mentor, Declan Doyle, and Anthony Weaver, the coordinators and the head coach, to at least as far as, pardon me, on the field, in the meeting rooms, how are you going to foster a level of continuity? But then also, what is it that you're going to do as far as team building too? I think John, he kind of did a really good job once he settled in as the head coach. But he settled in and brought in some good continuity, whether it be different speakers that came in, whether it be different bonding type meetings that they would have, or strategic bring in. It was cool because the NFL was partnering up with some different dairy farms. And so I remember I was at a public speaking event for the American Dairy Association, and the farmers were like, oh yeah, our creamery, we went out to the Ravens and had a day with the Ravens, which was awesome. And that is just a small bonding moment. One of the things, again, that was really, I think, critically important was the fact that, yeah, your coaches have family too. Players have family too. They would have a family day. So I know that those names that we all got accustomed to seeing, to saying, to bonding with, that they're no longer in the building. There's going to be a new group that comes in. But within that new group, I'm hoping that they also have that good continuity, that good bonding. That's going to be critically important for those guys, the Lamars, it looks like it's going to be, the Kyle Hamiltons, the Roquans, all those big name players to kind of foster back into the Ronnie Stanleys, the level of continuity that it requires for you to know that you can go into Pittsburgh. I got your back. You got my back. We go up into Cleveland. I got your back. You got my back. We go into Cincinnati. I got your back. You got my back. It's that I think is really what is going to be the telltale sign for this team moving forward.
Yep. And that's going to be difficult to do, at least at first, as you got new people coming in, but you can gel, you can make that happen together. I think that's something Jesse Mensah actually talked about quite frequently in his first couple of press conferences, that unity, that teamwork, that gelling, not only between players, but between the coaching staff as well. So you're right. Hopefully this is a team that can get that going. And we saw that when they won championships in previous years, and hopefully they can continue that here in 2026. When we come back, we'll talk about another player related to the Browns. Now, Tylan Wallace going to the Browns. Someone maybe leaving the Browns and coming to Baltimore. You see him on the screen there. We'll talk about it here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We are back, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher, Kadri Ismail, talking Ravens football here with you on the Wednesday evening. Lots and lots of discussion regarding involving the Ravens here in the free agency, as well as some draft stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy tuning in. Make sure you know that we're here twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us 5 stars wherever you get your podcast or your audio. It is going to be a great time for you for the rest of the season, the off season, as we trudge along to the draft and into training camp in the regular season. Be sure to tune in to the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. You also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, giving you what you need in terms of Ravens news nonstop. He has been giving us loads and loads of content. I know he is working very hard, so make sure you appreciate that by liking, subscribing, doing all that good stuff, following the social media platforms on Twitter, X, if you want to call it Twitter or X, Instagram, TikTok, all of that good stuff. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that, as well as Kevin is working hard to give you that Ravens news. Speaking of potential Ravens news, David Njoku visited the Baltimore Ravens on Tuesday. The Ravens are looking for a replacement for Isaiah Likely. David Njoku had a great time with the Browns in terms of stats and accolades, and FanDuel came in this past season and took over his spot. So now he's looking for a new home. David Njoku, we talked about him in the previous show, about him being a potential target, as well as maybe looking to the draft to add some pieces, some talent, some youth. Kevin, what do you think? David Njoku, potential Raven? Do you like it or not?
I like it. I like it a lot. And it's something I talked about yesterday on Locked On Ravens PM. I think it's a perfect fit for Baltimore and what they need. You know, I think this tight end class is really deep in terms of some of the players that you could potentially bring in. But, you know, coming in with 2 rookies is a little bit risky to me. I think you can take one guy as a rookie tight end because, again, with the Patrick Ricard situation, with the fullback situation, they're probably going to keep 4 tight ends this year. So I think that if you have Andrews, Njoku, Smythe, and then, you know, I think a mid-round rookie, there are a lot of those guys that I like for Baltimore. That's really, really good for me. And we mentioned it earlier with like Durham Smythe being the Charlie Kohler replacement. I think David Njoku being the Isaiah Likely replacement makes a lot of sense. You know, he's super athletic, somebody that, you know, yards after the catch, he's really good. Obviously, he's just a massive human being in general, so he can get up and catch balls in a really in the contested catch way. The Ravens need guys to do that. They need that type of skill set. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them because I think they need an established number 2 guy next to Andrews, and like Njoku gives them that. I think the last couple of years, the big thing for him has been health, where he hasn't been able to stay on the field for a full season. So that's going to be a big thing. But I think that, you know, there's an opportunity for Njoku here in Baltimore to get some targets, some catches, some touchdowns because of the departures that have happened in Baltimore. And I think a Declan Doyle offense should inspire any pass catcher to come and work in that offense, you know, where we know that for years, this Ravens offense has been pretty tight end, running back centric out of the backfield. It changed a little bit with Monken to be more balanced, but I think Declan Doyle is going to have like a system that Njoku would like to play in. And so I don't think it's going to cost you a ton. I know, Q, we talked about that for this morning's show, where I think Spotrac has him at about a 2-year, $20 million deal projection, which I would be totally fine with the Ravens paying him, especially as you continue to, again, reinvest money back into some of the positions you lost, and tight end is one of those. So I think Njoku is a really solid option and someone that honestly makes a lot of sense for the Ravens here.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. However, does come with the injury, didn't necessarily fully take it to the next as far as maximizing some of the things he could have done. Sure, you could say that, you know, he had different quarterbacks. The time when I know he was balling was when Joe Flacco was like, all right, I'm going to feed you the rock. So that's a good sign. It's now up to him and obviously Declan Doyle's offense and what it looks like as far as him and Andrews to get it done. But I'm intrigued and I'm excited to see what this athletic guy looks like. And I don't say this as a knock on David Njoku, but he's not, you know, Isaiah Likely. I think Isaiah grew into his own, and Isaiah has a lot more left in the tank than what David would have. But since he is the namesake of our guy, Samuel, I think that we should literally be like, oh, buddy, here we go. We're about to do this thing. And hopefully he'll be one of those guys that'll be strong contributors for the Ravens. I'm excited to see what he looks like in training camp. I know that he is one of those guys that can, like I said, make plays, and as long as he stays healthy, I think that's going to be a good thing for the Ravens when it comes to Declan Doyle's two tight end system.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I would love to see David in there, make it easy to get a jersey. I don't really buy a lot of Ravens paraphernalia these days, but I think I might throw a couple of dollars on that jersey if he were to come. But yeah, he definitely feels the need. I don't think that should, deter the Ravens from looking to the draft to pick up a receiving tight end or maybe a blocking tight end, whatever one they see fit. But I think that 4 tight ends, as you guys mentioned, is a sweet spot, and he would be a welcome addition if the price is right. Hasn't signed yet, but makes too much sense for it not to happen. We will see if it does come to fruition. We have a little bit of time left. I want to get into a little bit of what transpired yesterday with our good old buddy Maxx Crosby, who went on social media, had his little podcast, and talked about what went down between the Ravens and himself during his 5-hour plus stay in Baltimore, trying to get the physical done. He mentioned a lot of things, including that he had to fly to DC and drive a couple of hours to the castle to get things underway. He also talked about not meeting Eric DeCosta or Jesse Minter until 5 hours into the visit. What are your thoughts about that, Kevin? Do you think it's a lot about nothing, or are you still, maybe waving your finger in shame of what the Ravens did in terms of welcoming our buddy Maxx Crosby to Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, it's at this point, the situation is over, but people are continuing to talk about it because, again, it is a massive storyline. I mean, look, as Maxx Crosby even kind of said, like, the truth is probably never going to come out on any side here. Everybody's making themselves look good in this situation, or trying to at least. The Ravens have their story, the Raiders have theirs, Crosby has his. And so, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of all of it, right? So I think, like, at the end of the day, Crosby, I'm glad that he had the opportunity to share his side of the story. I think it's funny, Q and I talked about it this morning. The big thing to come out of it was the DC to Baltimore controversy. That felt like it was the biggest controversy of them all when it came to what Crosby had to say. But, I mean, he's dealing with a serious situation with his knee. I'm sure Baltimore probably did get cold feet, but not, I mean, again, it's just like, where was it due to? Was it just a small issue with the knee that, like, maybe could have caused a long-term thing? They backed out because they wanted Hendricks in. Was it that they saw something that was truly concerning with the long-term thing? For Crosby, he was more so focused at the start of, like, am I okay? Like, what am I doing wrong? And so obviously his surgeon, calmed him down about the situation. It's all over the place right now. I mean, hopefully this kind of signals the end of it with, Crosby was the last side that we were waiting to hear. So we have now heard it. And, there's always going to be a connection between Crosby and the Ravens and the Raiders, the 14th pick and the Raiders, like, all this different stuff. But yeah, I mean, my thing is Crosby's a Raider, Hendrickson is a Raven, and the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, but we probably won't get the full truth, maybe ever. So that's where I am with it.
Well, I guess if you like driving 495 versus 695, then, kind of go up, around and go through Bethesda, gets a little stop and go traffic, but then the merging is where it gets a little tricky. You merge on to 95, or do you take 295? Just saying. If you merge on to 95, but if you went 295, that means you got to go a little bit further, and you're getting closer to College Park, Maryland. That traffic pattern is a little weird. But then, say if you did get onto 95 and you're up in the Columbia area, it can be stop and go. But then you're trying to, go over to the Ravens facility. And if anybody knows anything, right around the time you get on that 695 and you're not even at 70 yet. Mother of pearl, people, whoever said, oh, we're going to widen the lanes. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's been under construction since the time I was doing the 2000 Super Bowl parade. Bruh, the construction is madness. I'm going with my boy, Maxx Crosby. From Dulles all the way up into, yes, Seymour, over to the Ravens facility can be a nightmare. That is all.
I like it. Giving the player side to all this. But he's right. I mean, that traffic can be, depending on when you land, if it's 9 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the evening, whew, that traffic is going to be quite the trip for sure. So, but I do appreciate where Maxx is coming from. Kevin, as you mentioned, there's probably a middle ground to all of this. Somebody's right in all of this, but there's no one ever truly going to get that information out there. But we got Maxx's side of the story. Didn't quite get the love and reception that he thought it would, especially with that travel. But it is what it is. He's a Raider, and most importantly, Trey Hendrickson is a Raven. That is going to do it for us here, the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. Tanya, Fahizi, Zimaro. I don't think I saw him here today, but a lot of people that I typically see here. Melvin, of course, joined the show on a bi-weekly basis. So appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. That is going to do it for us here. We'll be back on Monday talking Ravens football. So for myself, Kevin, Q, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you on Monday.